In this series, lowimpact.org talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
Welcome to the Low Impact TV podcast. Today I'm talking with Michael Hallam, who is involved with the Ethical Small Traders Association in Lancaster and has recently been working with Mutual Credit Services on a credit clearing project called Local Loop Northwest. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here. I really want to talk with you about what you're up to in Lancaster. I think it's an important part of what needs to happen for system change, which is what we're interested in at Low Impact.
Okay.
So I want to talk about something that you're doing in Lancaster called Local Loop Northwest. Can you explain what it is?
It's a platform that allows businesses or organisations, or anybody who trades that has supply chains, to track those supply chains as an aggregate together collectively, and identify when sometimes the supply chain will, if it's long enough, will loop back on itself and create a closed loop, and there'll be a certain amount of money in that loop, which is lowest common amount within that loop, which will be passing through everybody's hands. So A pays £100 to B, B pays £100 to C, and C pays it back to A. You can actually say, well, let's not change. We don't need to actually physically exchange the money. We just need to do an accounting exercise and say that's been cleared. You can
clear the debt, yeah. So I just want to say what you're talking about is credit clearing. So I will link in the description to introductory information about credit clearing so people can understand the concept.
Yeah.
So you're looking for trading loops locally.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Originally.
And so that you can clear a lot of debt.
Well, you can clear a certain amount. You don't want to overpromise, but I think in Slovenia it's about 10 or 15% that gets cleared in their big system.
We'll come to Slovenia in a minute. Yeah. So why do you want to find what's the benefit of what you're doing?
Well, it improves cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you've got less money which has to physically change hands, so that potentially reduces banking charges.
Yeah. And
it also potentially frees up supply chain gridlocks, because it's if you're waiting for somebody else to pay you before you can pay somebody else, that could get cleared in the loop if that's part of a loop. So those are three immediate benefits.
Yeah, late payments are a big problem for small businesses, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And so you could dramatically reduce the need for cash for small businesses.
In theory, yes. In principle, you could. Depends how many loops are forming. You could see, in theory, if you had a very tight local economy with lots and lots of loops in it, then you could dramatically reduce the needs of cash. But what you can also do, because you've got access to that data of who's trading with who, even if it's a sort of an abstract level, you can start to identify gaps that could be joined up if somebody was offering a service that is obviously not within the network.
Right. So you could provide customers for them.
Yeah, you can sort of proactively sort of, to some extent, craft. It gives you another tool for consciously crafting your local economy and what goes on in it.
Yeah.
Which is something I know, for example, the Preston model in down the road is very big on.
Have you got any connection with Preston?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've spoken to the people at Preston on several occasions in the past. I'm reading.
And are they interested in you? Are they interested in your ideas?
We're keeping our powder dry until we've got things up and running.
Right.
We've got things up and running and established, and then we will.
Because
Stick,
that would be a great place to do it, wouldn't it?
Well, it would. We do have people in Preston. In theory, Preston could happen at the same time as Lancaster and Morecambe. And if there are suppliers who supply into and out of Preston and the Lancaster Morecambe area, then that would be even better, because that would join the two trading areas together.
So is your plan to become a Lancashire network rather than just a Lancaster network?
Well, we're already seeing the need for. We've got two towns. There's three towns in a row. There's Preston, Lancaster, and Kendal.
Right.
And that, so that's within a 80, 90-mile radius of each other, and there's going to be a natural overlap between those three.
Right.
And then potentially you're moving into sort of central Lancashire as well. But at the moment we're looking at Lancaster Morecambe's the focus, but Preston, Kendal could easily be included. So it's we're looking sub-regional at the moment.
Yeah. I know that you're working with Mutual Credit Services, and I interviewed Tom Woodruff of Mutual Credit Services recently. Oh, hello. Say hello to Keith.
Hi, Keith.
And so the potential for bringing about massive change blew my mind with credit clearing. I'll link to the information I gleaned from that interview in the description below. But yeah, it really excited me, your local Loop Northwest project. How do you find the loops?
Well, I was going to say, if we're successful, or let's say when we're successful, let's be optimistic, it will be the first one in the UK. So it's very exciting to be a pioneer.
Yeah.
The software finds the loops, and the software is provided by the team in Slovenia, who
and that's Tomaž Fleischman, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hope to be interviewing him soon as well.
Right. That'll be a very interesting interview.
Can you say a bit about credit clearing in Slovenia? Because I found out about that, and that I just couldn't believe it.
Right. Well, I'm not an expert. I only know what Tomaž has told me and what I've remembered of what Tomaž has told me. But what seems to have happened is that at the fall of communism in the late 90s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Well, prior to that, because of the whole state control thing, wanting to have a finger in every pie, the businesses were used to sending an invoice to their suppliers and an invoice to the government. So they already have the habit of basically double accounting their invoices, and off the back of this credit clearing process was devised, and it's been running a significant percentage of the Slovenian economy ever since has been going through it. It's been clearing about 10 to 15% of all the transactions.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. But Tomaž will be able to tell you a lot more about that.
Yeah.
It's very inspiring, and you think, right, well, let's do it here.
Exactly.
We've got different conditions here, but
So you're using Tomaž's algorithm to find the loops?
Yes.
Yeah. So there have been plenty of other examples of successful clearing systems, haven't there? I mean, the banks do it with each other, don't they?
Well, that's the most successful example. This is the international banking system does it with its internally all the time.
It's sort of, if it's good enough for the banks, it's good enough for us.
Well, if it's good enough for the banks, it means it works, doesn't it?
It means it works.
And it basically, I suppose you could say that what we're trying to do is take on some of those banking functions in terms of the accounting side of things, and hand those tools over to the community.
Yeah.
The local business community and the extended community.
How did the project start? How did you recruit local businesses?
To the Credit Clearing Club. Well, we're in the process of recruiting them. I mean, we've only been doing that since September.
And how many
2022.
have been recruited so far?
Well, we're in the early stages, so we've got about 15, 20, sort of, if you include the ones that haven't quite got around to logging onto the system yet. We've got about 30. We need about 100. We're aiming for about 100, 120 before we go live.
You're going to go live at 120. Okay, that's not a bad start though. And there's no maximum number, is there? It could cover the whole of the country in theory.
Yes, in theory, it could cover the whole of the country because the software that mutual credit services have developed, or the principles that they've developed, allow for you to make it a recursive system.
Yeah.
So a bit like a fractal system, you can go small and you can go large.
Yeah.
You can still have the various layers or groups within the layers trading with each other. So you can trade across the system.
Yeah.
So it could be national.
So local business members send invoices to a central organisation in Lancaster.
Well, there's an app. They put their details into the app. I mean, what Mutual Credit Services is looking at doing is they're in the process of finding ways of making that an automatic process. Because unlike Slovenian businesses, we don't have the habit in this country of duplicating the effort of doing our bookkeeping. So if we get that information from the bookkeeping platforms talking to the mutual credit platform, then the credit clearing platform, then we can automate it for businesses, and that will speed things up considerably.
So to put things really simply, if businesses provide a little bit of information about their business operations, you can help them just clear a lot of their debts and reduce their need for actual cash, which would hopefully solve their cash flow problems and remove a lot of late payment problems as well. Yeah,
I mean, I would be slightly more cautious in terms of my claim, but that's the general direction.
Okay, that's what you'd like to happen, yeah. Okay.
Well, a lot of it depends on the businesses, because once you get going, what you're also creating is conscious business networks potentially.
Yeah.
Because we've already generating. Well, thanks. Slovenia are already generating a weekly update of the connections that are being made between the businesses that are already in the system in the trial phase. So we're already seeing. It's a little bit like, don't have the diagram here, folks, but it's a little bit like. If you look at a window on a frosty day and you start to see little frost patterns emerging, and this goes out here and it connects to that one, it connects to that one. Yeah. We're starting to see that happening, and we're refreshing that every week. So it's kind of growing and getting more complex. And we're feeding that information back to the businesses that have joined. So they're going, oh, wow, that's interesting. And it starts this reflective process where they start to think in terms of how they fit within a wider business ecosystem. Yeah. Which makes it easier to start to bring in other aspects of networking, because you're taking the local spend will help the local economy from being a theory, which must be true, mustn't it, to something you can actually concretely prove right down at the granular level of, look, that business is look, we've got a few businesses here that are feeding a lot of other businesses.
And nobody else really has that data yet, do they?
Nobody else has that data, not to my knowledge, but as I said,
so that would be unique. That would be really unique.
I bet somebody's got it somewhere, but let's not go there. We have it. We're unique. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It must be quite exciting
watching. Like it.
It must be quite exciting watching that grow.
It's viscerally exciting, because there's a kind of a magic happening.
Yeah.
Because the values that are being generated are generated by the goods and services that are exchanged within a system. Yeah. They're not generated by the money itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, the money itself doesn't have any intrinsic value except as a carrier, a temporary store of value. So it's even called a store of value between businesses or people that are producing real values, either goods or services. So most people don't get that.
Yeah.
Because most people think a pile of money has got value, but it doesn't. So once you actually have a system that's actually starting to demonstrate values in a completely different way, it does, as Neo, as Morpheus would say, free people's minds so they can see, the underlying architecture behind the illusion of the economy they're in.
I can't tell you how excited about what I am about what you're doing. I'm really, really willing you to be successful.
Well, that's marvelous.
What's your background and what's your inspiration, and how did you get involved with this kind of thinking?
Probably that goes back to the early 90s. 1993 is Michael Linton, who was the architect of the.
I've interviewed Michael before. Yeah, I'll put a link to that.
Right. Yeah. The what we call LET systems, local exchange trading system. We set one of those up in Starbridge in 1993.
Right.
Which is where I was living at the time. And so that made me realise that was my first big milestone, because all of those accounts, they start at zero, and if you freeze the system and add up all the accounts, it should always be zero.
Yeah.
And yet there's all this trading going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, hold on a minute, what's going on? This is like magic. What? How?
Yeah. Chris Cook tells a story about a loop of, say, 10 people who all owe each other a tenner.
Yeah.
And then somebody finds a tenner and pays the first one, and then the tenner goes around the whole loop and clears all the debts.
Yes.
And then maybe somebody else says, "Oh, that's my tenner, I lost it," and takes it, and it's like, what just happened?
Yes.
All these transactions have happened, all this debt has been cleared, and there's no extra money in the system. Where did the money come from to do it? It's just magic.
Exactly. And you still got the tenner.
Yeah. Well, somebody has.
Somebody has. Well, I mean, that's the way the national economy works, isn't it? The Bank of England prints tenners, puts them in the economy, and takes them back with taxation.
Yeah.
In principle. So yeah, it is magic. It's brilliant, and that led to one thing, led to another, and then we had the financial crash in 2008. Before that, nobody was interested in this stuff because they just had as much cheap debt as they wanted.
Yeah.
And so I started again in 2008, looking for something and I ended up with this system. In principle, I had this system worked out, kind of basically three elements. Because everybody was trying to set up local currencies as well. And, and I was trying to say, please don't set up a local currency because it won't work. And
how do you say that? How do you say that kindly? I've had that conversation as well.
I said, please. I said, look, if you want a local colouring competition, by all means. But getting school kids to design the notes or whatever. Then we did have one here. I thought might be successful in South Lakes a few years ago. Because they went for the tourist angle. They just went for the only way it works is if you get inward investment through tourists buying your notes and taking them home and sticking them on their fridges with fridge magnets.
Or if you have David Bowie on your notes.
And people buying them and sticking them on their fridges with fridge magnets, or frame them, or whatever they do. That's the only way it can work.
Yeah.
And that's they unashamedly went for that angle in South Lakes, and I thought,
really,
maybe this will work. But 3 years down the line, it's dead. Or it was dead. So anyway, I said, look, you don't need that. You can make sterling or any fiat currency act as if it's a local currency, because the analogy is, an electric circuit. You've got three elements. You've got appliances that you want to power up, which are equivalent to the businesses and the goods and services. You've got a power source, the electricity, which is equivalent to the money, and then you've got wiring that connects the electricity up to the businesses. And what you need to focus on is the wiring, because if the wiring's faulty, then you can pour as much electricity or money into the system as you like, and it'll all leak out, and very little will go to the utilities. If you get the wiring right, you only need a little bit of electricity, and it'll just keep going around and powering, because it doesn't disappear. I mean, it goes into your cordless drill, and it goes out again. So that was the system, simple system, and I was hawking that around. And trying to get some, people to program it, and that didn't really work out. And then came across Dill and Tomaž and Tom and all these people, and it's like, we built it.
Yeah,
we've been running Slovenia for 30 years.
I'm committed to getting these ideas across to a wider audience, but they're quite complicated. And I'm trying to sort of condense them into bite-sized chunks and elevator pitches and strap lines.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on
then
that.
more information if people want it. But
Okay.
the
I'll give
concepts.
you
Yeah.
the concepts are abstract, but I'll give you, like, people come up with things like, how can something be more than 100%? You know, and you go, well, you can have a lot more than 100% of anything. It's just a number, you know. If you've got an empty milk bottle and you pour another milk bottle in it, that's 100% filled. If you try to pour another milk bottle in, you're trying to put 200% of milk in a 100% container. You know, it's simple maths, but a lot of people have got maths just, it's like, you know, you can edit this bit, but I think there's an inverted pride in being useless at maths. And it's not restricted to any group or class. In, you know, it's across the board. Oh, right, oh, it's maths, I'm switching off.
Yeah.
We've got a project in Lancaster. Esther's got a project that it's co-partnering with, called the Plastic Bottle Top Project. This refers to your question about complexity of ideas. So what happens is that householders collect bottle tops. They go through a system and find their way of cleaning and sorting, and find their way to a business, a community enterprise called Relic Plastic, based in Hesham, Morecambe. They turn it into new stuff, and people buy the new stuff, and when they're tired of the new stuff, which hasn't happened yet, they can put it back into the system. They're trying to create a closed circular loop of plastic, right? And then it hit me one day. This is exactly the same. Got exactly the same mechanics and dynamics as the money system we're trying to create, the circular money system, except instead of this abstraction of money, we've got concrete plastic bottle tops.
Yeah.
And when you explain it in terms of something concrete like that, everybody gets it straight away. So we've decided that the Plastic Bottle Top Project is a perfect metaphor for the more abstract project of how finances and money circulates and works.
Yeah, it's a tricky one when it comes to money. Just having the conversation, which was, you know, started sort of several years ago now, about where money actually comes from, and people don't believe it.
it's just issued by a central bank as debt.
As debt, when you know, most of it is when people take out mortgages. It's
yeah. I mean, look, if I
brings money into existence.
Into existence. I mean, if I don't know, say you wanted to borrow my bike, or you needed a bike, and I gave you my bike, and you said, all right, well, I'll pay you for the bike next week. I've just issued you debt in order for you to sort of have something you need, which is the bike. So I've effectively become a bank. So whenever anybody defers a favour that they want something in return for, they're effectively issuing debt. You know, they're issuing a promise to deliver in the future. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's literally all it is. I mean, why we've allowed this sort of, you know, this principle to be owned and locked up by a banking system is slightly beyond me.
Yeah, it's criminal.
Yeah, we've given away our tools.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything special about Lancaster? Is it you? Is there a particularly supportive council? Is there a different kind of culture?
Yeah, well, my ego is trying to resist the temptation to say, of course it's me, because that's rubbish. There are a lot of amazing people in Lancaster. It is a very special place. That's not to say everywhere isn't a special place, but if we're going to compete, let's compete on quality. You know,
I've heard good things about Lancaster.
It's fairly isolated, as I said earlier, or you might cut that bit out. But as I said, Lancaster sits. You know, you've got Preston, Lancaster, Kendal. There's 30 miles between Lancaster and Preston, and Lancaster and Kendal. It's people. It's a bit self-contained, but it's not like isolated because it's got a huge, massive university attached to it, Lancaster University, and it's got another university, Cumbria University, embedded in it as well. Culturally, it's a fantastic place. It's got stunning scenery. I mean, it sits on the Morecambe Bay, which looks into the foothills of the Lake District. It's a dream place to live, actually. And the house prices have already gone up massively. We avoided that until just after COVID, and then they all shot up.
So I
brilliant.
heard that the local Chamber of Commerce has been very receptive to your ideas.
Yeah. No, the Chamber of
ideas.
Commerce is very receptive. We have a very diverse, egalitarian Chamber of Commerce that believes in all the right things.
Right.
So, yeah.
So will the business members of the Chamber of Commerce be in the clearing scheme?
Well, the Chamber of Commerce will be in the clearing thing.
Right. Okay. So they'll bring them.
Yeah.
They'll bring their members with them.
Yeah, they're already on board. We've already
That's a
had those
coup, isn't it? That's a coup.
Yeah, I guess you could call it a coup. We've also got the business improvement districts. You heard of those? We've got one in Lancaster, one in Morecambe. They're both supporting it as well. And we've got the economic development side of Lancaster City Council support it as well. So we've got quite a lot of support in principle for the project.
What are the biggest barriers, do you think, and how might we remove them?
Biggest barriers. I have to pause for a minute. One is human beings are inherently lazy and don't like doing something. Putting the effort into doing something new.
I'm not sure that's a barrier that can be removed.
Well, it depends how much pressure we get put under, doesn't it? It is. I mean, human inertia is a barrier, definitely. I mean, another barrier would be, I think you've referred to it, is comprehension. Just understanding, getting your head around this thing. I suppose another barrier is new. It's innovative. What could go wrong? How do we make it? How do we make it something which is robust and stands the test of time, and can be scaled, and is an unqualified success?
Yeah, exactly. How do we do that?
101 tiny little obstacles along the way, or opportunities. We can all see obstacles as opportunities to overcome. So there's a few barriers there. Those are the main ones I can think of.
How do businesses in Lancashire get involved? Do they contact you?
They know. Well, yes. I mean, they can contact me, but the shortest distance between 2 points is what Esther's all about, facilitating. And so we have an app. We have a link to the trial. So the best thing to do is for me to just put that, give you that, and you can share it with people.
Okay, yes, please. Yeah, so I'll add a link to where businesses in Lancaster can go if they think they'd like to get more information about this Lancashire Credit Clearing Scheme and maybe join it.
Lancaster, Preston,
local Loop Northwest.
Yeah, there's also a 2.5 minute video on there on that trial page, which is
I'll embed the video in the article.
Very clear.
How do we scale? How do we connect and federate the new economy?
That's two questions. How do we scale, and how do we connect and federate the new economy? Those are two. So the simple one is how do we scale, which is the software and the protocols that Mutual Credit Services I've already built and in the process of developing further allow for scaling between different systems. So basically, the short answer is the software. The software makes scaling possible. Right, it's there already. The potential is already built in. Yeah. The other aspect, how do we link that to the emerging new economy? Well, that's slightly more complex, because then you've got to say, what does the emerging new economy look like in the round? And there are various things you could point to. Kate Raworth's donut economics model, I think, is a really brilliant metaphor for the kind of system that we're going for, which is a steady state system that, in terms of material, steady state system that's facilitating as many activities as possible, but within within physical boundaries. It's a really good metaphor. That's kind of like a capstone, but then you've got lots of other elements as well around that. that have to be put in place to make that work, which Esther has been working on developing. To be honest, we've got some innovative approaches to that. In fact, we've come up with a whole new economic theory, which is sort of utility-based way of looking at economic success.
Okay.
Which is in a nutshell is based on making sure that the stuff you need doesn't break all the time and is fit for purpose, so you don't have to keep changing it every 5 minutes, and then adding to GDP, which makes GDP look fantastic. And say, hey, the economy is doing really well, but it's only doing really well because it's breaking faster.
Exactly. So if something breaks or you lose it, that's good for the for GDP. That's good for the economy. If something lasts a long time and doesn't need fixing or doesn't need replacing, obviously that's a good thing, but it's bad for the economy.
Exactly. So there's a bit of a tension there between those two things. So we're kind of developing a narrative that sort of, if you like, turns that tension inside out and says, focus on the stuff you need.
Yeah.
Then focus on, if you need to change it, then look at what kind of monetary and exchange systems are necessary to make that work. So there are various sort of tools that we're developing that kind of allows for the articulation of a wider economic framework.
Michael, got to go.
Yes.
Been brilliant talking with you. And I obviously am going to be following your progress because I'm working closely with Mutual Credit Services, and so I think you're at the forefront of something really that has huge potential for change, and I'm really interested in your progress.
Well, that's very nice of you to say that, Dave.
I will talk to you again very soon, and hopefully we'll have some interesting news.